What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. We had a trade go down, kicking things off for the Bulls in this offseason on Saturday. The Bulls send guard Lonzo Ball to Cleveland. In return, the Bulls receive power forward Isaac Okoro, a 24-year-old 6'5" guy who can hit the corner three and play rock-solid defense for this team. Okoro will play hard. He'll be an active and switchable defender for the Bulls. He'll give Chicago much-needed small forward depth, with Pat Williams and Modest better suited as natural fours in this rotation. He's a guy who was selected at 5th overall in 2020. He did sign a 3-year deal in 2024 worth $33 million, so a little over $22.8 million is left over the next 2 years on that deal. This makes a lot of sense for Cleveland as well, bringing in a veteran guard like Lonzo, which we'll see Ty Jerome possibly move out the door there. That's widely expected for Cleveland. Also, they did in the Cavs just lock up guard Sam Merrill to a 4-year, $38 million deal, keeping him in Cleveland. Obviously, where this hurts for the Bulls is that they had an opportunity last season to trade Lonzo for a first-round pick, turned it down. And obviously, with this move, bringing Okoro to Chicago, the Bulls don't receive any asset management in terms of draft picks. So that's the part where I think this kind of stings for Chicago Bulls fans. I know it did for me as well. I wasn't too happy to see the Bulls flip Lonzo for a singular player here. And Okoro, up to this point, hasn't been the most productive in his NBA career. So, I mean, he is 24 years old, so he's young. He's a guy who's known for his defensive hustle. He brings veteran athleticism to a rebuilding roster in Chicago. So that part I'm excited about. Again, he fits the young guys with experience mold that this front office has gone by so much of recent. And pretty much, that's all they've looked at the past few years in terms of how they've brought guys in and fit them into this roster. So one can only look at this, though, as questionable management of assets by Chicago. As this saga continues, they continue to make moves that kind of make you scratch your head. This one, again, is one that when you look at the opportunity to land a first-round pick for a guy like Lonzo, who has had the troublesome knee injuries in recent years, getting a guy in Okoro in return and that being the only piece is not going to make a lot of Bulls fans too happy, I can tell you that much. And just by seeing the reaction of a lot of the Chicago faithful here is kind of explaining that. As well as, Lonzo Ball, wish the best to him. Hope he gets off to a good start there in Cleveland for a team that's coming off the first overall seed in the East a year ago. So a team in a much different situation. And for Lonzo, he gets to play meaningful basketball immediately in a career that, may be numbered given that miraculous knee surgery he was able to play off of a year ago. But for the Bulls, it's going to be interesting as it remains to be seen what Okoro is going to bring to this roster. He's a guy who his numbers don't stick out at all for a guy who was drafted 5th overall. He's a guy who, you hope he brings that veteran type experience towards a young roster, like I said there. So I think another wrinkle into this Lonzo Ball trade is that when you look at the Bulls, I think a return of Trey Jones is a very realistic possibility now. Billy Donovan and the coaching staff love what Trey Jones brought to this team. He'll have interest as well from several other teams in the market. I do think he will have a pretty decent market there when it comes to interest. So the Bulls obviously won't rule that out. Josh Giddey is expected to sign a deal around $30 million a year coming up here in the coming days. So we'll expect to see that. I think with Lonzo moving, that just makes that all the more makes sense there for Chicago. We'll get into as well here some names to watch in free agency as the first domino falls there for Chicago. But, some of these names are ones that I've mentioned before in previous episodes, so we'll continue to monitor that situation for these guys. However, Anthony Simons is a guy who is being discussed as a possible trade piece for Chicago. Boston is more than likely looking to shed more salary and moving on from him. I know they just acquired him So Anthony Simon's a name to watch there, a guy who's coming off of a year where he scored just over 19 points a game. So could offer some interesting, he could be an interesting fit for Chicago. So, and Jonathan Kuminga, it'll be fun to see how the Bulls view him, given the moves that they have already made now. If they still see him as a big fit here in Chicago, but a trade scenario that could turn into a sign and trade, maybe sending Vooch over to Golden State, like I profiled a bit earlier on, is definitely on the table. RJ Barrett, another guy that I talked about previously, he's emerged in rumors as another potential upgrade from a guy like Patrick Williams, who is also being talked about in trade scenarios as well. I think if you can shed Pat Williams, I think it'd be a good thing for Chicago, not so much given that they would have to bite all of that, bite the bullet on all that money that they owe him. But I don't know if Pat Will is a fit here going forward. So we'll see how they kind of view his value as a Chicago Bull. I think as well, you look at a name that just happened yesterday. DeAndre Ayton just finalized a buyout with Portland, making him a free agent. It's rumored that he wants to play in a winning situation. I don't think DeAndre Ayton's going to end up in Chicago, especially given how expensive he comes. I don't expect that, but you never know with the questionable asset management that Chicago has shown in recent years what they're going to do there. So keep an eye on that name as well. As far as a guy I wanted to get into, he had an Instagram story that made a lot of Bulls fans kind of look as to, is this it for Coby White? He posted a picture of himself walking down the tunnel at the United Center, and he captioned it, thanking him for everything till infinity. So speaking to God there, and he had the Mustard song, Pray For Me, on this post as well. So we'll see what's next for Coby White. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially moving on from Chicago. I know he was talked about a lot in the 2 days of the NBA draft. Nothing ever came to, a conclusion there in terms of a move for him. I was hoping the Bulls could get some draft assets back in return for him. Coby has 1 year left on his deal, $12 million roughly, so definitely a movable guy in terms of the contract situation there before he hits free agency next summer. I think this post definitely speaks to maybe where Coby White's head is at. Maybe he knows something we don't at this point in time, that he could be on his way out of Chicago. I did see a name pop up as well in terms of being more likely to move here, and that's Ayo Dosunmu. And I thought that he could be a guy the Bulls could build around, but it's seeming like he has actually a better chance to move first in terms of the Coby White situation there. So Ayo Dosunmu, a guy to keep an eye on. It's very obvious that the Bulls are looking to, kind of move into and build off of this scenario of they're a team leaning into a youth first rebuild here. They're moving on from veterans like Lonzo, obviously Levine and DeRozan this past season to go along with Caruso. He was now a world champion again. So acquiring a young defensive-minded guy like Okoro has them continually keeping an eye on young upside names, and Okoro is just the next guy to fit that. So whether this leads to long-term success remains to be seen. It's an interesting approach by this team. I mean, turning down a first-round pick for a guy like Lonzo just to flip him for a guy like Okoro will have a lot of people scratching their heads. I know it certainly did for me. I was like, it doesn't add up here. Why would you turn that down just to hang on to a guy a little longer? But this organization has done it time and time again, so not that surprising, unfortunately. I expect there to be much more roster activity as we move into next season, obviously. I think Josh Giddey, it's reported that he is gearing up to sign a deal around $30 million a year, which when you look at it, it's decent value given that the scope of these other deals. And I'll give you a few here. Desmond Bane's on a deal, $37 million a year. DeAndre Ayton obviously is set to be a free agent. I just noted that. He's at $36 million a year. Suggs on Orlando, $35 million a year. Chris Middleton at $34 million. Jalen Green at $34 million a year as well. Jeremy Grant coming in at $32 million, and then Jordan Poole is at $31 million. So Giddey being clipped at $30 million a year is not terrible when it comes to the value and how you look at the market for some of these other deals. It's just wild to me when you look at the overall, conclusion to the DeRozan, Levine, Caruso, and Ball saga you ultimately received for the departure of those four guys. The Bulls ended up with Josh Giddey, Kevin Huerter, Chris Duarte, Okoro, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, their own first-round pick, which they hadn't had in a long time. So it was the 12th overall pick this year, which they eventually took, Noah Essangue out of France. 2 second-round picks. So what could have been. A lot of Bulls fans are kind of looking at this DeRozan Levine saga as a time where the Bulls were, they were a very exciting number one seed in the East for a while, and it turned into kind of lackluster uncertainty in the years to follow. Obviously, the Lonzo Ball injury kind of threw a wrinkle into everything. Just one playoff appearance with that group, and that came into a first-round matchup with Milwaukee there where they were eventually bounced in 5 games. So I just think it's not a good blemish for Chicago when you look back at that era of time with this organization to kind of lose those 4 guys for the eventual return that we just looked at there. But Caruso, getting that second ring with Oklahoma City really couldn't have worked out better for him. So I just think it's not a fun time when you look back at that for Chicago. You can't really hang your head high on that if you're the front office. And this Lonzo Ball move is just the next chapter of situations that the Bulls have put themselves in that lead you to believe, what are you doing? Like, how are you valuing and looking at your assets and what you could get for guys in return? And not getting a first-round pick for Ball is just another situation where you look back at that and kind of scratch your head. So we did have kind of switching gears here. We had the Summer League schedule drop. The Bulls will have a 4-game schedule with the opportunity to play a 5th game if they fall short of the top 4 playoff bracket there, but they will open Summer League play July 11th against Toronto. Games will be played for the Bulls on July 11th against Toronto, obviously opening that July 12th against the Sacramento Kings. Then they play 2 more games, July 14th and 16th against Indiana and Milwaukee. Games will be played on UNLV's campus in Las Vegas, so it'll be fun to see the young guys get some playing time. I'm excited to see Ulbrich play, as well as Noah Essangue get some tick there. So it'll be fun to see that kick off. We'll see how those young guys look and finally getting some playing time there. But the Chicago Bulls have things happening here. I think Nikola Vucevic is a name that could be moved any day now. Free agency opening tonight at 5 o'clock Central Time officially. So we'll keep you guys up to date on all news Chicago Bulls, all happenings with the players currently on the roster, some names to look out for. I'll continue to monitor and report on any rumors for you guys. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think the Bulls got fleeced in that Lonzo Ball deal? I certainly kind of expect there to be a negative mood surrounding that Lonzo Ball move from Chicago fans. I know already there has been chatter about the disgruntled outlook on that move. So, but let me know what you guys think. Let me know who you want to target in free agency. I know some of you guys have mentioned Bol Bol as a name to bring into Chicago as well. He is going to be a free agent on the move. So lots of scenarios, lots of opportunities out there. Want to kind of get an idea of what you guys are looking for. And again, thank you for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest. We'll see you guys next time.